Hello listeners, in this video let us learn about cultural studies. This video focuses on the cultural theorists of Britain and their works. We will see the major theorists like Richard Hoggard, Stuart Hall, Raymond Williams, E.P. Thompson, Dick Hebditch, Angela McRobbie and their works. We will also see the cultural critics around the world. First, we must know that what are the factors that cultural studies focuses on. It focuses on popular culture, youth culture, and mass culture. The Center for Cultural Studies actually started in the year 1964. It came to be known as the Center for Contemporary Cultural Studies. It is a PG research center at University of Birmingham, UK. The founders are Richard Hoggard and Stuart Hall. There are four important figures of cultural studies. First is Richard Hoggard, who is the founder of the center. Second is Stuart Hall, Raymond Williams, and E.P. Thompson. Raymond Williams at first started the center in the year 1964. He was the director of the Center of Contemporary Cultural Studies between 1964 to 1968. In the year 1698, Stuart Hall became the director of the Center for Contemporary Cultural Studies. In the year 1979, Richard Johnson, he took the directorship from Stuart Hall. The Center for Cultural Studies started its own journal. The students, that is the PG students who are studying there, they started to publish their own papers. Also, the founders began to publish their papers. All the published papers compiled to form a book. It is named as Working Papers in Cultural Studies. This collection came out during the spring of 1971. This journal paper concentrated on British culture, and there was another book made, The Empire Strikes Back, Race and Racism in 70s Britain. This is a collection of works which concentrates on the race and racism in the Britain. During the 18th, 19th and 20th century, it was Britain which invaded other countries to rule, but at the late 20th century, that is during 1970s, there were literary papers and post-colonialism that started to voice out the colonial atrocities. So this book, The Empire Strikes Back, is a note on the race and racism that were prevailing in the other countries, and if other countries they strike back against Britain, how would the situation be? So that is the element spoken in this book. Next is resistance through rituals, youth subcultures in post-war Britain. This work is edited by Stuart Hall and Tony Jefferson. After World War II, there were this culture of youth in Britain who dress in a different way. The youth culture differs from the mainstream culture. So this book focuses on it. Remember, all these books and all these journal papers are published by the Center for Contemporary Cultural Studies, University of Birmingham, UK. Next book is Off-Center Feminism and Cultural Studies, edited by Sarah Franklin, Celia Lurie, Jackie Stacey. We must know that this Center of the Contemporary Cultural Studies existed as a center in the University of Birmingham, UK, between 1964 to 1988. But after 1988, the center came to be known as the Department of Cultural Studies at University of Birmingham. And there was an end for this Department of Cultural Studies in the year 2002. There were many controversies going by, and the department closed in the Birmingham University. But then the genre of cultural studies still prevails and also spreads its roots around in the literary works. And we must know that cultural studies at first started in Britain, but then cultural studies emerged in different countries. Like today, Cultural studies exist in many countries, such as American cultural studies, Australian cultural studies, Indian cultural studies, and so on. Now, let us see about the founder of cultural studies, that is Richard Hoggard. He was born in the year 1918 and died in the year 2014. Before he became the director of the Center of the Cultural Studies, he was a professor of English at Birmingham University in the year 1962, and he became the director of the Center of the Contemporary Cultural Studies between 1964 to 1968. And then there was a call from UNESCO, and there he became Assistant Director General at UNESCO in the year 1969. Let us see his important books: The Use of Literacy, Aspects of Working Class Life. Here he speaks about culturalism. He gives a Marxist approach. He speaks about culturalism, anthropology, and historical. So here, under anthropology, he studies about humankind. His second important book is The English Working Class Culture, the 1930s to the 1950s. In this book, he studies about the working class people in Britain. He divides the study into two parts. First is An Older Order. Here he details about the account of the lived culture of the working class. In this part, he briefs about the ancient culture of Britain that exists among the contemporary society. In the second part, he speaks about yielding place to the new. Here he speaks about an acid account of the development of commercial culture. In this part, he briefs about how Britain starts to commercialize, modernize, and merchandise. Let us see about Stuart Hall and his famous book. He was born in the year 1932 and died in the year 2014. He was a Jamaican born British, and he is a cultural theorist. He is the director of the Center of the Contemporary Cultural Studies between 1968 to 1979. He was an editor in a journal named New Left Review. Stuart Hall focuses on black culture, that is, he starts to study the people of Jamaica. In the earlier centuries, the black people, they came to England either as workers or they are taken as slaves, and they are the one who laid the railway roads and they created the essential infrastructure of England. But at one point, they started to demand for citizenship because in England, they started to create their own culture, which was far away from the mainstream society, that is, the England society. And soon as the black people got their citizenship in England, their culture elaborated. The point of Stuart Hall is that none focused on the culture of the black people, but the whole world focused on the mainstream British culture. Let us see the popular work of Stuart Hall: Policing the Crisis, Mugging the State, and Law and Order. This is a critical social studies. He thus says, we are concerned with mugging, but as a social phenomenon rather than as a particular form of street crime. Mugging is nothing but a pickpocket or a chain snatching crime, which is very much close with robbery. So, mugging means to attack and rob somebody in the street with a knife. So, this culture of mugging was practiced in England, and the mainstream society blamed the black people. They say that it is the black one who practice mugging. Stuart Hall took this as a social concern and he studied about this mugging cultural phenomena. His point is that if the blacks are given opportunities like job, wages, and equality, then there wouldn't be such criminal activities. Now let us see about Raymond Williams and his popular books. He was born in the year 1921 and died in the year 1988. He was a Welsh Marxist and cultural critic. Raymond Williams and Stuart Hall are also a major reason for the flourishing of cultural studies. His famous essay is Culture is Ordinary, 1958. In this work, he gives a brief definition of what is culture. According to him, culture is what we are every day. That is, whatever we eat, the attire we wear, the way we speak, everything depends on our culture. So, culture is within us. He also uses the word culture in these two senses. That is, to mean a whole way of life, it means the common meanings which I told now. The food that we eat, the attire we wear, everything based on a whole way of life. The second one is to mean the arts and learning. That is the special process of discovery and creative effort. So under this, it comes the discourses, the literature, art, and learning. How culture is interpreted in the literature work, artwork, and the like. He also writes a famous book, Culture and Society, 1780 to 1950. Let us see about E.P. Thompson. He born in the year 1924 and died in the year 1993. He was an English historian. He was an editor in a journal named The New Reasoner. He writes about the culture of the people. His two famous books are The Making of the English Working Class. In this book, he talks about the working class of Britain, that is, the working people of England, which is very much similar to D.H. Lawrence's novels. Even Thompson speaks about the coal mines where people started to work at first. If you see D.H. Lawrence novels, his novels are related to coal mines. His father is a coal miner. So we see that the ancient working structure has influenced the writing pattern of the writers too. The next popular book of E.P. Thompson is The Poverty of Theory and Other Essays. Next is Dick Hebbage, born in the year 1951. He was a British media theorist. His popular book is Youth Subculture, The Meaning of Style. Here he displays the culture of the youth, that is, the dress codes and other practices of the youth. For example, the punk ripped t-shirt, or at least demonstrated that codes are there to be used and abused. In this work, Dick concentrates only on the boys, because when a law is imposed on the youth boys, they started to revive and they started to resist the laws. In a way, they show up their own power. Another contemporary literary critic is Angela McRobbie, born in the year 1951. She is a British cultural theorist and feminist, and also a former student of the Center of the Contemporary Cultural Studies. She writes about girls and their subculture. Previously, we saw that Dick had concentrated on the boys' subculture. Here, she concentrates on girls because she is a feminist. And the book name titled Feminism and Youth Culture from Jackie to Just 17. The name Jackie Just 17 is the name of a magazine. Here, if we see, McRobbie also says that even girls have their own culture. Girls show that they are distinctive from each other. She concentrates on the magazine culture. That is, if we look at a front page magazine sheet, we see that there is a culture of portraying a woman in the first page. So this, she considered it as a study. The book also talks about the girls' choice of choosing their own music, attire, dress, nail polish, and the like. Till now, we saw the birthplace of cultural studies, that is Britain, and now we are going to see cultural critiques around the world. Pierre Bordeaux, born in the year 1930, died in the year 2002. He was a French socialist and philosopher. His famous book is Distinction, a social critique of the judgment of taste, translated by Richard Nice. Here he speaks about the cultural taste. that is the social constructs, meaning each of us have our own likeness for taste, that is for recipes and food. We prefer our own foods according to our taste buds. So he studies about this cultural taste. He says that each of us have our own taste buds and likeness is because we are adapted to the community and to the tastes that we are following for years. And since we have practiced for a long time, he says that it is a social construction created by our own community. So he thus says the habits internalized social structures. The next popular critiques are Max Horkheimer, born in the year 1895 and died in the year 1973. Theodor Adorno, born in 1903, died in the year 1969. These two are German philosophers and socialists, and these two studied about commodity culture, that is conformism. They wrote a paper titled The Culture Industry, Enlightenment as Mass Deception. Here they speak about how culture transformed into trading industry. They also wrote a popular book titled Dialectic of Enlightenment. Here they say that society has invaded us. Here he refers enlightenment to technology and the development. And all the technology development created by people is to support commodity. That is, we ourselves changed or transformed culture as commodity. They say that education has transformed people as consumers. When we get education, we try to consume things for our own needs. For example, we buy properties, we buy products, we buy materials, and so education transforms a humankind to be a consumer. The next critique is Walter Benjamin, born in the year 1892, died in the year 1940. He is a German literary critic and philosopher. His essay is The Work of Art in the Age of Mechanical Reproduction. In this work, Benjamin says that the uniqueness of artworks died before technology, because today if we are going to a museum, we have our own cell phones to take pictures of each thing that are displayed. But earlier in the ancient times, there weren't any technology development of carrying one's camera or carrying one's cell phone to a museum. We perceived or enjoyed everything in our naked eyes. In this work, he says the aura of the work of art, the technique of reproduction, detaches the reproduced object from the domain of tradition. For example, today we have OTP platforms to enjoy or to watch a movie. But before 20 or 30 years, one has to go to a theater to watch a movie. So art has changed according to time. So the liveliness detaches from our tradition. The next critique is Laura Mulway, born in the year 1941. She is a British feminist and a film theorist. Her contribution to cultural studies is in the field of film studies. She refers male gaze. She says that in a movie or cinema, a woman is portrayed as an object. She studies this particular male gaze in cinema. She writes an essay, Visual Pleasure and Narrative Cinema. She introduces a term named scopophilia, pleasure in looking. She analyzes certain movies and says that every human being gets a pleasure when they look, when they gaze at things. For example, when a person dances or while watching a movie or sport, anybody get happiness out of it. Similarly, as cinema is a male-oriented one, females are shown as an object. She thus says that males are active and females are shown as receivers, as passive. Here there forms an hierarchy of male and under male, female. Hope this video helps. I have put in all the efforts of delivering the introduction of cultural studies and the important cultural critiques. If you want to share your inputs, please write it down below. Thank you for listening.